It's so nice to see you all again. We are starting off day 2. Thank you very much for a wonderful day 1. We were all commenting yesterday afternoon. It felt a little like it was going 90 miles an hour, at least for those of us who had a little bit to manage. But I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too, and learned some things in the meantime. Just wanted to go over a couple of things. I wanted to remind you that the workshop program should be your one-stop shop. So you should be able to find your sessions, navigate your way around. We recommend that you download it as a PDF and have it open throughout the workshop. You'll find the session descriptions, information on the keynote speakers, and a list of attendees with their email addresses, which is great in case you wanted to contact someone after or during the workshop. There's also a detailed agenda with everything you need for the virtual sessions. You'll see the color-coded themes. The plenary sessions are in yellow, and the breakouts are color-coded by theme. Each of the session titles is clickable, and it will lead you to another part of the program that contains the session description, presenter names, and a link to join the session. Each concurrent session will have its own unique Google Meet link, as I'm sure you figured out yesterday if you were able to join us. So if you do want to linger in those meeting rooms to talk, that's totally fine. We understand it's difficult to meet virtually. But we will end that session on time so that you can get to your next session. So if you have any questions, please reach out. The best way to reach us right now is through the chat, or you can always use the SOS.workshop email that you have been receiving emails from. Wanted to remind you that we added a folder to the Google Drive folder that you have that has been shared with you. So it's called 2020 SOS Workshop for Participants. Inside of that, there's a resources folder. Please dump anything that you want into that folder. You will also find, if you like just to share some web links, you'll also find a document called SOS Workshop Breakout Session Links. If you want to just drop some in there, then folks can find your resources after your talk. Quickly, I wanted to go over opening the chat and changing your layout in case that hasn't been obvious to you. In your upper right corner of Google Meet, I've circled the chat icon with a pink circle. If you click on that, you should have the chat box open up there for you. If you click the little people, then you'll see all the names of the folks who are in the room. Changing your layout is pretty easy. You click the 3 vertical dots there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and that should give you the option to change your layout, your background, do some troubleshooting, use your phone for audio, for example. So hopefully that will be simple enough. I think we're going to go ahead and move on. Carrie, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we get started today?
No, thanks, Hillary. I think you covered it well.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Well, we are going to do the SOS update from the Boulder team. If you're new to this community, Science on the Sphere is pretty much developed, made, run from Boulder, Colorado. That's why we call ourselves the Boulder team. So you'll be hearing from Shilpi Gupta, Keith Seawright, Jeb Stewart, and myself. So Jeb, you want to go ahead and take over sharing? And if everyone can just turn their webcams off as we are doing this transition.
I'll actually go ahead and have Keith share. I'll just...
Did I say Jeb?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I will jump in eventually.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, is everybody seeing the slides?
Yes.
Well, welcome from Boulder, Colorado. So I'm Keith Seawright, and I'm one of the speakers for this presentation. And there we go. So this is what we're going to talk about for the next little while here. We're going to have a hello video, so you'll get to meet all of the Boulder team. We have brief introductions, and Jeb is going to give an introduction overall, and then we're going to go into the product suite. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the different SOS applications. I know a lot of you are new to SOS, so we're going to talk about some of the things that we think are going to enhance your experience using SOS. If you're a veteran, it'll be a nice review, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two that is more recent. So we're going to talk briefly about the last release we did last year, what the tech team has been doing, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the data catalog, explore the Ed Forum, and support. So let's go to that. And let me set this up.
Keith, we can't hear anything.
I will try it with the mute off. We practiced this yesterday, but videos are tricky. So let me start over and tell me if this works.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shilpi Gupta, and
Yes.
I'm a software engineer for the Science on a Sphere project for almost 10 years now. My main roles have been the design and development of new features and enhancements for the SOS product suite. I hope everyone has an amazing workshop.
I'm Beth Russell, and I've been on the Science on the Sphere team for over 13 years. I work with both SOS and SOS Explorer, helping sites prep for their installations, use them well, and then also creating new content for their systems.
Hello, everyone.
Oops.
My name is product suite. I hope everyone.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry about that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shilpi Gupta, and I've been a software engineer for the Science on a Sphere.
My apologies. We practiced this.
Them well, and then also creating new content for their systems.
Are you seeing it?
Hi everyone, my name is Alex and I've been
Yes,
with
we are.
the team for
Excellent.
2 years now. I mainly help out with SOS support as well as some software feature development. If you've ever had a hardware issue or done an SOS upgrade, you probably worked with me in the past year or two. And I work closely with the team to try and make SOS the best that it can be and bring features that everyone will love. So I hope you guys enjoy the workshop.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeb Stewart. I lead the Informatics and Visualization branch, part of the Global Systems Laboratory, which I'm proud is the home of the SOS program and this great crew.
Hello, I'm Keith Seawright. I'm the lead engineer for Science on a Sphere and SOS Explorer.
Hello, my name is Eric Hackathorn, and I'm the lead developer for Science on a Sphere Explorer. The project has a desktop version that can be used as a kiosk in an exhibit, and a free mobile version that can be installed on your tablet or phone. This year has been a challenge without easy access to installations and limited opportunities to engage with customers. That said, I'll show you some upcoming ideas and technologies we've been fermenting during our time in quarantine.
I'm Hilary Petticord. I specialize in education, training, and data set content for the SOS team and SOS Explorer.
Hey, SOS Workshop. My name is Evan, and I maintain the website at sos.noaa.gov.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ian McGinnis. I work part-time on the Science on a Sphere project, mostly maintaining and developing the SOS software. I hope everyone has a great workshop.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shilpi Gupta.
Okay. It's now Jeb's turn to do the Boulder introduction.
All right, thanks, Keith. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our update from Boulder. First, since this is one of our largest SOS workshops in our history here, thank you for joining us. It's great to see the excitement and the crew around this program and all those who support it. For those of you that are new, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on who we are. Again, like Keith said, some of this might be repeat, but you might learn something new. We might talk about it differently from year to year. So as you see in the background here, this is our building where we work when we're not at home in quarantine. This is the David Skaggs Research Center out of Boulder, Colorado. In here, we are part of the Informatics and Visualization branch. This is part of an advanced technology division of the Global Systems Laboratory. So there's a lot of acronyms here. This is all part of NOAA. It's a great home of the SOS program. So we have, our crew is here, as you heard in our introductions. Many of us have been with the program for a long time, many years, dozens of years. I've been with NOAA myself for over 20 years. The Science in the Sphere is a creation of our past laboratory director, Dr. Sandy McDonald. I encourage you to attend tomorrow's keynote presentations. There you'll have a presentation, you'll have an opportunity to hear directly from him. It should be a good presentation. Within NOAA, we are on the research side. Our focus is on innovative research towards environmental forecast models, decision support tools, visualization systems, and all of this is in to support NOAA's mission, as well as to promote scientific literate public. Reiterating what Carrie said yesterday, as we've come a long way since the creation of this program, to a place now where we have, through SOS technology, we reach millions of people across the world every year. With the help of this active SOS user community, we can continue to improve our work as well as hopefully yours. These workshops are a great opportunity for our team to hear feedback, your suggestions, how you guys are using the systems, as well as to hear feedback of what might be useful for you to have in the future. It gives us ideas that we can create and incubate and add new features to these systems. So it's a really great opportunity both ways here. I really am glad that everybody's able to attend. It also gives us an opportunity to talk about what we've done over the last couple of years. So it gives us the opportunity to relay the latest and greatest developments from our development team here. SOS has a big wow factor. In this building, my office is just down the hall from the installation that we have. I hear the oohs and ahs as people walk in. It's a great feeling to hear all this excitement when kids, especially kids, walk in to see this thing. But it is really more than a wow factor here. Science on a Sphere has a real impact on how people understand our complex phenomenon. We heard from our NOAA Admiral Tim Gallaudet yesterday that there's no greater program for education outreach than Science on a Sphere. This year has impacted us all in a variety of ways. I'm grateful for those who are able to join us today for this remote workshop. We've had changes in mind for our program for a while, and then this year has accelerated some of those plans. One of our core strengths at GSL, the Global Systems Laboratory, is our ability to research, develop, and transition technology and capabilities. The ability to make these transitions is also a metric in how we're evaluated for our laboratory, and we're pretty successful at that. We continue to innovate, create, and improve and share these new capabilities with our partners and users. In this last year, we did make one change, however, to the SOS program. We, NOAA, are no longer directly involved in the installation process. Previously, in past years, periodically throughout the year, we send a part of our crew out to do the actual installation, hanging the sphere, painting, setting up the projectors, and those type of things. That is what when I talk about the installation process, that's what I mean. We've had long-standing relationships with our distributors. They've also done many installations over the years. And for the time being going forward here, as new inquiries come in for people interested in SOS, those requests are directed to our list of distributors who then will support the installations themselves. So it is a change. It is coming. What does this mean? There's a lot of people here that already have spheres. Not much if you already have an existing system. NOAA will continue to support the sites, improve the software, support distributors. As you heard from our yesterday's Tim Gallaudet, NOAA tremendously values and supports this program and will continue to do so. It's a key component for education outreach for NOAA. Change is inevitable, but we'll continue to evaluate and make changes as necessary to keep the SOS program viable long into the future. So it is in our best interest to see this out there. It's a great program. It's great to see all the people who go around and support it. I'm talking very fast, SZA. Thank you. And then I'm almost done, so I don't have too much left here, but thank you for that comment. But with that said, I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for joining us this week. The SOS User Network is a big part of the success of this program. I look forward to listening and learning from you through the rest of this workshop. And then I'll turn it back to Keith here. We'll go over some of the great capabilities and features of the SOS system we have and we've been working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeb. So are people able to see the slides? Are they showing okay?
Yes.
Okay, I saw a question in the chat about enlarging the slides. So if you guys move your window a little bigger on your screens, you might be able to see it. So I have that problem a lot. So I want to make sure everybody can see them okay. All right, let me talk about the SOS lineup. So I think you all know this, but we have 3 basic products that we call SOS. We brand them that way. The big sphere, Science on a Sphere, that's been around for 16 years. We're getting close to 180 installs worldwide now. In the center is SOS Explorer, the flat screen version, and it has about 35 installs over the last 5 years. We call this the exhibit version, and this shows you a 2-screen configuration with someone controlling the operation of the sphere and then the big screen showing so a crowd can see it. And then on the right, you see SOS X Mobile. That came out last year. We've had a huge response. We've had tens of thousands of downloads, and we have thousands of unique monthly users for that. So let's talk about the big sphere, Science on a Sphere. On the left side, I describe that picture, which you've probably seen on the website, is sort of the constellation of SOS. So in the center, you have the sphere with the 4 projectors, you have the display software, and then you have a series of applications and capabilities that go with it. So starting in the upper left, the SOS Remote app. This is the tool that the presenters use to control the sphere. It has our entire data catalog available. It has the ability to create and give presentations, and it has a lot of other functionality, but it's intended for the presenters. The next is the public kiosk. So the public kiosk is designed for someone who doesn't know SOS to walk up and be able to control the sphere. It's a much simpler tool, and we know presenters are not always available, and you may not want to run auto run, so this is a way you can introduce interactivity for your system. The next is Visual Playlist Editor. The Visual Playlist Editor has a couple of capabilities. It allows you to create your own presentations and preview them in a flat screen view. And it also allows you to add your own data sets or customize data sets with your own content. The nice thing about the preview is you're able to take a look and see what it looks like when you don't have access to the sphere right away. Next is alignment. As we all know who have the systems, it's difficult to keep your system in alignment, those projectors, so that they look perfectly, and we have a lot of tools to help you with keeping those so you have the best possible display. The website has a lot of functionality that we use. We use it ourselves here with the Boulder team. It's primarily a way for people to learn about SOS and how to get it. If you have SOS already, it will help you get the most out of it. What ways to see the data we have, programs you can use, and support information, releases and release notes, that kind of thing. And then finally, for people who are not SOS community members, who are just interested in science, teachers will go there, general public, students, etc., and can learn a lot about the data sets and information we have. Next is the data catalog. So this is the crown jewels of SOS. This is all of the content that NOAA manages and maintains for you, as well as pushing out real-time data sets. And then finally, the translations. 3 of our applications, the user interfaces, can be changed to non-English. So if you want to use these for people who don't speak English, you have that capability built in. In the center, the cartoon shows some major categories of our data catalog. So we have over 600 data sets in the catalog. The catalog is browsable and searchable, and it has a lot of descriptive information and links back to the original sources and producers. We also have over 40 real-time data sets, and those go out to the entire world, to all of our sites, and it's something like 20 terabytes of images every month that goes out. It's really hard to estimate how many people see SOS. There's a cartoon on the upper right, or a picture you've seen before. We're estimating it's around 60 million viewers a year. Probably not nearly that much this year. We all know what this year has been like. So that's not the greatest, but we expect that to resume again. The website gets a lot of activity. We have tens of thousands of visits a month. And our Facebook page is a big hit out there. We have hundreds of thousands of likes and followers. So next up, Shilpi is going to dig into some of the key highlights of our technologies. And so it's a refresher for some of you, and it'll be new to others. So anyway, take it away, Shilpi.
Thanks, Keith. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as most of you know, the core of the SOS system is custom visualization software that uses 4 projectors to create a seamless image around a sphere. The software takes a 2x1 rectangular image and splits it into 4 disks, 1 for each projector, and geometric and photometric alignment techniques are used to merge the images. So in the end, you have captivating global visualizations on a big floating sphere. So as Keith mentioned, since there's a lot of people new here, we wanted to talk about some of the features in the product suite, some of the features and tools in the product suite in case it might be useful at your site. So next, please. These features can roughly be divided into presentation and data set tools. So if you're a presenter, you definitely know about the iPad app called SOS Remote. This app is used for dynamic interactive SOS presentations where you can orient a sphere and you have access to the entire SOS data catalog of over 500 data sets plus your own site custom data sets. You have access to custom presenter notes and you can create a presentation playlist on the fly. And you also have the alignment interface for projectors on the iPad app. Next. One of the features you may not be aware of are called spotlights. Spotlights are simply 4 to 8 data sets that are selected maybe once a month or once every 2 months by the SOS team in Boulder to showcase data sets that are compelling and maybe new to you, a current event, a historical event, a new SOS feature, the latest data set, and so on. It's basically a succinct way to explore the data catalog over time and give quick access to timely events. Next, please. Another kind of hidden feature is called live programs, which you can access from the iPad app. Live programs are just carefully crafted SOS presentations created by users of SOS, including scientists, educators, museum staff, and student interns. Live programs use existing and custom SOS datasets to tell a story and teach audiences about a specific topic. They always include a presenter script, which can also be helpful if you're new to giving SOS presentations. So in this example, you can see we've got energy on a sphere, milestones in meteorology, and the one that's selected in orange is called climate change and health. And when you select that, it brings up a list of all of the data sets that are part of that live program story. Okay, next please. Another feature on the app is called the Playlist Builder, which is a simple way to create and edit presentation playlists on the fly instead of having to access the SOS computer, which can be kind of restricted at some SOS sites. It gives you access to dataset descriptions as well as the option to add presenter notes. Next. And as Keith mentioned, we have a tool called the Visual Playlist Editor, or the VPLE for short, in our product suite. And the VPLE has 2 modes. On the left is presentation mode, which allows you to create a presentation through searching and browsing. You can add custom presenter notes. You can export a presentation to share with SOS sites. And on the right-hand side, we have dataset mode, which allows you to preview a 2D version of the dataset, modify an existing dataset, and create a new dataset. So it has tons of customization options. Next. So getting on to the sphere, what we actually see on the sphere, there's a number of presentation tools that can help you make your presentations more dynamic and interactive and give the audience more context. So with the iPad, you can use the point tool, which is shown with that white mouse pointer. You can draw using the pen tool, as shown by that dark blue circle at the top. You can drop icons, as shown with that red bullseye icon on the left. And you can also zoom into areas of interest, as shown by the big blue zoom lens. So again, this all just gives your audience more context. Next, please. Another feature we have is called the splitter, which you can access from the iPad at the top. You can basically split the sphere into 2 to 4 slices that replicate the area in front of a presenter. And this is useful for audiences that are positioned all around the sphere. You can avoid having to rotate a data set multiple times and repeat that explanation. So in the top left, you see a normal full spherical image. And in this example, the presenter was standing probably somewhere in front of the Indian Ocean, and they split the sphere into 3 slices. And you'll notice that the underlying global data got replicated in each slice, as did the zoom tool, any labels, text, annotation, and so on. Next, please. So another, one of our data features for SOS are layers. Layers are simply global images or movies that you can stack on top of each other and blend between them. So in this example, in the top left, we have an Indian tsunami ocean that's a data set that's a movie. And on top of that, we wanted to overlay a transparent PNG with land vegetation. So we did that. You can see that in the middle image. And then you can use the iPad app to turn layers on and off dynamically during a presentation, as well as adjust their transparency. And the bottom image shows that you can also blend between opaque layers. So on the left-hand side, you have sea surface currents. On the right-hand side, you have sea surface temperature. So you can blend between the two in order to tell a story about their relationship. Next, please. Another data element we have are called picture-in-picture, or PIPs for short. PIPs are basically just images, movies, or text that you can lay on top of global data so that you have more flexibility and you don't have to bake it into the underlying data. So on the far left-hand side, we wanted to add a legend to our data set. So we used the VPLE to add this current cropland yield legend. In the middle section, we wanted to add text to our data set. So we used the VPLE, which has a PIP text editor, where you can just directly type in text. You can format it, save it, and then it'll automatically pop up on your sphere. And in the far right, we have something called moving PIP, which is a newer feature. A moving PIP is just any kind of PIP that when you give it a path, it will move. So you basically have to provide it a simple CSV file, which is comma-separated value file of frame number, latitude, and longitude in sequence, provide it to the VPLE, and then when you load up your data set, press play, your PIP will start to move and follow your path. Next. And finally, another feature we have are called captions or subtitles. SOS can display industry standard subrip text files, or SRT for short. In the bottom right-hand side, you can see an example of an SRT file. It's basically just a sequence of time codes and text associated with that time. You can convert audio files to the SRT format for free using a service like YouTube, which is what we did, or yes, Beth did. All of our SOS narrated data sets have captions in English, and they are turned off by default. You can turn them on using the iPad app, or you can use the VPLE to turn them on in a pre-programmed way so they just pop up when you start your data set. Captions are useful for the hearing impaired, auto-run mode when no presenter is available, and for non-English speaking audiences when audio is in English. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Keith now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpi. Well, I'll talk about a few other components of SOS. So the kiosk is something that's relatively new. It's within the last 5 years. The picture on the left is a brand new kiosk that was just installed at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. It's a really pretty setup. So it is a simpler interface, as you can see on the right, from the iPad. It doesn't do as many things, but it's intended for a different audience. It's expected that someone who is not familiar with SOS, who is in a museum or other exhibit location, is going to walk up and try to understand quickly what it is they would like to see. So data sets are in groups, and those are the rectangles down the left side. And In order to figure out what data set you want to show, you select one of the groups, and then the circles along the bottom are the data sets. You select on one of those, and it appears on the sphere and also in this virtual trackball in the center, and you can move that around with your finger. You can also tilt using the gray arrows. You can stop, start, drag the frames, etc. You also can use some of the overlays that are shown on the right side. The description information is a short and simplified version of what you see on the website. The idea is someone who has a attention span of a few minutes at best is going to walk up, select a data set or two, and then move on. So we want it to be brief and to the point. This is completely flexible. So if you have a kiosk and you want to use it with your SOS, you can change these groups, you can change the data sets and show exactly what makes sense for your location. The other thing it does is it allows you to have multiple language support. If you look in the upper right of the screen capture, you'll see English and Chinese. So the person who walks up is able to toggle the language. Assuming the translation's available, then they can go ahead and use the language that they prefer if you're in a multi-language situation. Speaking of translation and localization, 3 of the user interfaces we have support different languages. So the remote app does, the playlist editor does, and the kiosk does. Additionally, the data catalog, portions of the data catalog will do that. The name, the descriptions, categories, and keywords. So the yellow arrows that you see on the picture there, those are all pointing to data catalog translation. So how do you do the translation? Well, it's not simple, but we have the tools that you'll need to do that. Qt Linguist is shown in the upper right. This is a tool that we provide that allows you to customize the language, and the example shows English, Spanish, and Chinese. So that is a way that we offer. We also let you use spreadsheets. So you can fill out a spreadsheet with information on your translations for the different elements of the user interface or the data catalog. And then we provide you tools to load that up so it'll work. One thing to keep in mind about translations is the SOS team in Boulder is not a linguistic expert team. So we partner with others. If you want to do translations, we will help you. And if you want to contribute it to the community, we would greatly appreciate that as well. Next, I'm going to go into some release highlights. About a year ago, we had our last release. And we have a variety of things. You can go on the website and look at release notes if you want to know all the gory details. But here are a few highlights to let you know about. On the left is a configuration editor. So when you set up your SOS, there are some important parameters you need to use. You may from time to time change these, but it's very error prone if you go in with a text editor and make a change. Sometimes that can break things. This is a friendly way that you can see what it is and you can make your changes. In the middle is something that was requested for a long time. When you were creating text pips in the playlist editor, you would get this placeholder text that says pip text. You wouldn't get the actual text. Well, we fixed that, and so now you do. On the right side this is a little more under the covers, but Ubuntu is a version of Linux that SOS uses. And every 2 years, an LTS version, which is short for long-term support, comes out. And these are very stable and reliable. And so we upgraded to 18. And so you get 2 years of Linux fixes and features. And this is good for 5 years, although we anticipate that we will upgrade to 20 before that. And then for the kiosk, we refreshed the default data sets you get when you install it. And actually one of the changes we made is something you're going to hear from our keynote speaker today. So Shilpi will have more to say about that. And we fixed some issues with the kiosk, launching too many times and some error messages that were distracting to users. So since the release, what has the tech team been working on? So we're working on a new website. That's in the early stages, and we're not sure when that will come out, but that's in the works. GitLab. So what is GitLab? GitLab is a tool for software engineers. And what does it give you? It allows us to use better software engineering techniques. And we run testing automatically, which will result in higher quality software for you. It's much easier for us to do software installation and upgrades. And it's really helping the way we create our real-time data sets. In the center bottom, data server modernization. So we have been using the same servers for our data sets for many, many years. And they are basically out of warranty. And so we did a job to port these to a new system. Not very exciting stuff, but what it's going to give you is it's going to give you more abilities to recover from outages that either happen at our site or to our data provider sites, and then backfilling those missing frames. Finally, on the lower right, Spiceworks is a help desk ticketing system that we introduced earlier this year. So when you use those email addresses you see there for support, it goes into the ticketing system, and those of you who have tried that have gotten an automated response. So this is a better way than email, we think, to track and manage your issues as they come in. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Hillary to talk about the dataset catalog.
Great, thank you. Keith, just let me know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so as Keith said earlier, our dataset catalog is our prized asset. We've been adding data sets to it for almost 15 years. It was actually Beth's first job on the team when she was an intern. Inside of sos.noaa.gov, under the Datasets tab, you'll find descriptions for over 550 data sets, including a complete description of where and how they were made and the importance of the data. Long before we had SOS Explorer, we tried to make data sets easily viewable right from the website. So here you can see a couple of those options in the lower left there. You can see the flat screen of an animation, and then in the lower right, you can see our interactive sphere, which gives you a really nice little preview. So Beth does have a lightning talk tomorrow, so we're excited for you to hear about the new data sets we've added this year. And finally, right here in the middle, the phenomena-based learning modules are actually on the education page, but they take the data sets and put them into these really great phenomenon stories, like can elephants sense tsunamis, and why do stones sail across the Death Valley Desert on their own? How did a tortoise cross the ocean? So essentially it takes our data sets and makes fun stories that are a really cool jumping off point for some learning. Next slide, thanks. If you like to learn on your own about our system and you have questions, you can find a couple of different ways to help you with that. So if you go onto our support page, look for manuals, you can see that we have a long list of manuals. Many of them are very long as well. Use the find feature to find what you're looking for, and you should be able to, if you like to read how to do things, you should be able to find your way through there. Also, on the right here, under the resources drop down, you can find video tutorials if you'd rather watch us doing these things. Thanks. Next slide, please. All right, so SOS Explorer, just a quick update. If you're a fan, we are very proud that we won the Federal Laboratory Consortium Technology Transfer Award this year, or 2020 Impact Award. We're really proud of ourselves. It was both the SOSX exhibit and the mobile app. And if you're confused about the two, I made a couple little boxes there, and I'm just going to quickly go through them. We have around 40, I think we have maybe 5 sites in the works for SOSX exhibit. We have somewhere around 25,000 users. That's how we're able to measure is how many people use it per month for the app. SOSX exhibit runs on a high-end laptop or a desktop. SOSX mobile only runs on mobile devices. SOSX exhibit includes 13 real-time data sets on mobile. We really only have static real-time clouds. For exhibit, we store data locally And for mobile, we store data in the cloud. We support 4K displays plus. We've done some pretty huge displays like 16K at conferences for the exhibit. And for mobile, the resolution is actually based on your internet connection, like Netflix. So if you don't have a great internet connection like me, you're probably not going to get such high resolution. Internet can be variable for exhibit because most of it's stored locally. Internet connection is definitely required for mobile. We released exhibit in 2015, and in 2019 we released mobile. Exhibit is not free, mobile is free. Next slide, please. Okay, just real quickly, we do have these education forums occasionally. We were going to try to do them every 3 months, but typically I hold them whenever I feel like we have a lot of things to talk about. It's really fun. We all get together and just have a really easy webinar where people share what they're up to. So please join us for those. Make sure you're signed up on one of our emails. Also, one-on-one support. If you email sos.support@noaa.gov or sos.explore@noaa.gov, you can sign up with us to have some one-on-one support if you don't like to read manuals or do video tutorials, for example. And is that the last slide, Keith?
That's
yeah.
the last slide.
In fact, we do not have time for questions, so I apologize for that. We did start a teeny bit late, and of course, that was a lot of slides to get through. So the good news is I think most of your questions were answered because we do have a pretty big team, and people have been doing that in the chat window. But please feel free to get in touch with us anytime you have questions, and we're happy to answer those. Shilpi, are you ready to introduce our esteemed keynote today?
Shilpi, you're on mute. Shilpi, unfortunately, I think you're still on mute. Don't know if you can hear us. She doesn't see if she's saying what we're saying.
So I do not have her picture open. Is she?
Shilpi, you're muted. We can see you talking, but we can't hear a thing.
Doesn't sound like she can hear us.
Oh boy. Okay. Let's see. Let me see if I can get to the introduction for Lars so I can help her out until she gets that sorted.
So you're all seeing the slide?
I am seeing the slide, yep.
Yeah, so that's...
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can.
My phone just got muted on its own all of a sudden. It said there's a lot of people on the call.
Wow.
Okay, so I will start again. I really apologize for that. Okay, we are so excited to welcome director, artist, writer, and activist Lars Jan for our second keynote of the 2020 SOS virtual workshop. Lars, who is the son of emigres from Afghanistan and Poland, is known for visually striking, genre-bending performance and installation works that explore emerging technologies, live gatherings, and unclassifiable experience. His original works, including the White Album, Holoscenes, The Institute of Memory, Abacus, and Slow-Moving Luminaries, have been presented worldwide by BAM Next Wave Festival, the Whitney Museum, Sundance Film Festival, CAP UCLA, Toronto Nuit Blanche, Poland's Boska Komedia Festival, Istanbul Modern, and the Sydney Festival, just to name a few. He is the recipient of many awards, including the 3rd Audemars Piguet Art Commission, and is a TED Senior Fellow and Sundance New Frontier Story Lab Advisor, and is on the faculty of CalArt. His climate change-themed installation, Holoscenes, created a sensation in Times Square in New York, coinciding with the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords. His recent staging of Joan Didion's seminal essay, The White Album, culminates with a Quaker-style conversation around themes of protest. And just to put in a quick plug, I was lucky enough to get to see The White Album in Los Angeles last year, and it is absolutely exquisite and includes one of the most innovative uses of audience participation I've ever seen. So if you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. You can learn more about Lars's works at earlymorningopera.com. Many of you may also know Lars Jan as the director and writer of the poignant SOS short film Holocene Little Boxes, which was released in 2019 and made possible through a collaboration with Eco Arts Connections and Science on a Sphere. If you haven't seen it yet, the film should be on your SOS computer and is available for download from the SOS website. Today, Lars will walk through many projects which address the climate crisis in public spaces and artist-scientist relationships in these times. So Keith, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing, and Lars, when you're ready.
Thanks so much, Shilpi, and hello, everybody. And just to confirm, I'm not muted, am I?
You're all good.
All right, living the dream. Well, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are on this planet as it rotates. My name's Lars, and I'm going to try to stick to a script so that 20 minutes passes like 20 minutes should. I'm hitting the button present now. I'm going to choose this window. And hopefully now you can see my full screen. Yeah. Is that true?
Yep, looks great.
Great. Okay. So the title of this talk is how the choreography of our contemplation completes a portrait of our distress. And I'm going to sort of walk you through what that, where that sort of idea comes from and hopefully what it means a little bit. I think it has a lot to do with where we are as a country at the moment. And I think it has a lot to do, this idea has very much to do with, I think, what the essential purpose of scientists and artists, and particularly in relationship with each other, might be as we go forward. And I'm going to talk about two public art projects that I've made over the last few years, and as well as a kind of question I've been considering, especially in the last several months, about the position of artists in society, the position of scientists in this society, and our relationship with each other. So the first project is called Slow Moving Luminaries. It was completed during Art Basel Miami Beach in 2017 as part of something called the Audemars Piguet Art Commission. And it was on a site which is right next to the ocean, and it's amidst all of these luxury hotels in downtown Miami. It was about an acre of beach, essentially. And it's, of course, it's the Florida coastline, so it's incredibly endangered in terms of coastal flooding, as a result of climate change. And it actually is very prone to something called sunny day flooding. So not only with storms and tidal surges and that sort of thing, but also on a perfectly sunny day, sometimes the water will just rise up and seep up from the sewers or from the ground and flood South Beach. So I was really interested in the sensitivity of the site, and particularly in the collision, maybe the irony of the collision between this site of extreme revelry and also the kind of reality of coastal flooding. So as you can see, it was a two-story pavilion, a temporary pavilion that we built in Miami, surrounded by these luxury hotels. And there are these illuminated sculptures, which you can sort of make out in this photograph, which are on scissor lifts, the kind that you see in warehouses that kind of scissor up and down when you're kind of fixing the lights or hanging a projector, that we hacked. And these sculptures rise and fall slowly according to kind of an unknown a synchrony and rhythm that we devised, such that they actually only sync up for about 1 second in one location every 12 minutes. And as a viewer enters the pavilion, they sort of snake through a labyrinth on the bottom floor, and then eventually they find themselves on a roof deck, where they realize that the roof is actually covered in water. And they're met with views of the open ocean that you can just sort of barely see to the right of the image to the east. And also they look down the skyline of South Beach. And from this perspective, you realize that, you know, the viewer sort of is able to realize that the buildings are abstracted miniature versions of the nearby hotels. And I'm going to play this 20-second video for a moment. It'll be a little steppy. In reality, it's smooth. But what happens over the course of the installation is these buildings are moving up and down through this water roof, and it gives the kind of illusion that they're rising and sinking from the water on the roof deck, which from the right angle sort of starts to cohere with the ocean to the east. And obviously there's a sort of a little parable that happens from this perspective about the sensitivity of this particular site and the potential fate of these luxury hotels. Now, from a different vantage, so this is an image taken from a drone looking back towards the city, which would, you know, you could see this perspective from a nearby hotel in an upper story, or from a passing plane. So this is much higher up. You can see that the installation kind of assumes a different character, and what you can make out in this image is, you know, nothing really other than the letters SOS. And if I just take a couple of steps back, you can see that the letters are there once you're on the roof deck of the installation looking at the buildings kind of hypnotically move up and down. But they're really just abstracted geometries from that perspective. From this perspective, they're illegible. And then to return to this perspective, the installation itself is illegible. Really, all that's legible are the letters. In fact, you know, we can kind of make out a pool and a road and everything is sort of like omnisciently distanced. And this particular symbol, SOS, for me, you know, resonates with Science on a Sphere, obviously, so I had to kind of lead with it. But it also reminds me of the distress signal, right, of the person stranded on an island, setting a bonfire next to something to SOS that they've written in the sand, hoping that somebody will rescue them. And the point that I want to make here is that the installation provides one experience to those that are on site, but another altogether for a more distant and incidental audience. In fact, the viewers on the site become part of the statement of the work. So as they contemplate the rising and falling of the buildings during a blue chip art fair on incredibly expensive property, which is very vulnerable to sea level rise, it turns out that what they're standing next to, but they can't see, is a massive SOS signal. And what they probably never realize is that the labyrinth that they just walked through on the first floor takes the shape of these letters, SOS. And they've traced this pattern, this SOS pattern, with their bodies in order to get to the roof deck in the first place. And lastly, the orange flags, which you can see here, flying atop the installation, are the International Maritime Symbol for SOS. And so might be visible to sailors aboard the cruise ship, if you can see in the very top of the image in the distance, that you can see several miles out at sea. And these layers of distance, for me, really clarify the work, and the awareness of them cumulatively changes the meaning of the installation overall. So the piece isn't only saying that climate change is coming or is here, and that these hotels or this way of life is in danger. It's also saying that our contemplation, the people who are sitting on the roof deck, who can't see the SOS that they're standing next to while they kind of consider the fate of these buildings, that their gathering and their stasis in the face of this challenge is actually a central part of the story. So Slow-Moving Luminaries is about the title of this talk, how the choreography of our contemplation completes a portrait of our distress. A few years before that, I made a piece that's sort of a companion work to Slow-Moving Luminaries called Hollow Scenes. And I collaborated with several scientists very closely in the development of that project. It took several years to make. And it was another outdoor public installation that was free to the public. This one's more performance oriented. And I'll talk more about this piece in a moment, but for a moment, and this is the piece that actually we adapted for the Science on a Sphere Little Boxes film that Shilpi mentioned. But first, I want to read a quote from German pastor Maren Niemöller, well, I'm sure many of you have seen a version of this quote or seen this quote before, but I just want to put it up for a moment. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I've been thinking about this quote, not because I want us to consider, or I've been thinking about genocide. I'm not trying to make any sort of light comparison with World War II, but I have been thinking about what happens when alliances splinter, and what happens when, as in the case of viewers of slow-moving luminaries, we place our attention on those who stand by and watch. And you may or may not know, I'm not sure, I think many of you probably do, that the arts in this country have been under concerted attack since Reagan's presidency. And arts education in schools has been defunded and widely eliminated. The National Endowment for the Arts budget has been slashed. And honestly, there's been an attempt to eliminate the agency entirely from several of the last annual budgets. And arts organizations and leaders have tried to make arguments about their importance based on these new metrics that are really the metrics of their enemies. That is, that arts organizations they tend not to attest to the value of the arts in and of themselves as a vital part of our humanity. But these days, they tend to attest to the value of the arts mostly in economic terms. Like the arts will revitalize urban centers and feed local businesses and that sort of thing. And I actually think that modus operandi is incredibly insufficient and unimaginative. And I believe that the arts matter because they reflect us back to ourselves. They encourage critical thinking. They're vehicles for marginalized voices from our society and are a space for the integrity that comes with not being in it for the money. And maybe more than anything, I'd offer that the arts is the ultimate playground of creativity, the trait that is a main line to our humanity that separates us forever from artificial intelligence, for example. And obviously, creativity is absolutely central to scientific practice. So but to adapt the quote for a moment, I've been thinking about this idea that first they came for the artists, and I did not speak out because I was not an artist. And I guess the question I have for the scientific community is whether scientists have sat on the sidelines over the past 40 years as our national leadership has defunded the arts. And the argument was made that the arts were not worth the investment, they're not practical, they're a waste of time. But that's not actually why they were defunded, just like we didn't invade Iraq for freedom, right? We invaded Iraq for oil. So the arts were and are attacked because they pose a danger to purveyors of ignorance, to consolidators of power, to cruelty and blindness. The arts were attacked because they are engines of imagination, empathy, and critical thinking. The arts break down silos of thought and community. They are syncretic boundary crossing by nature. And they're just what the doctor would order for the shambles of our current public discourse. And so again, I want to ask, this is just something I've been pondering. Scientists out there, have the past few years given you a formative experience of the devaluation of your work, the devaluation of your field, of yourselves? Do you feel that scientists can be assured of their or your place in society as you had been? Can anything be learned from what the atrophy of the arts in the U.S. might portend for the sciences? Can a renewed alliance between artists and scientists be formed, knowing what it means to be discredited? Can scientists stand up for the arts and vice versa? And I don't mean legitimately discredited. I just mean discredited by some in the public sphere. I'm just going to press pause there and return to Holocene. So this is a project that I really the project came from a daydream that I had. And in this daydream, a man was sitting in a room, totally normal room, in a chair reading a newspaper. And very slowly, water started to seep up from the floor. And, the person reading the newspaper noticed that the water was seeping up from the floor, but it was not unusual to them. It's certainly not any kind of crisis. And they just kept on reading the newspaper as the water rose. And eventually the water got to their mouth. They took a big breath, held their breath. The water kept going to the ceiling. And they just kept on turning the pages of the newspaper as if nothing had happened. And as they turned the pages, actually the newspaper started to disintegrate in their hands and float away. And they kept on reading paper that was no longer there and turning pages that had fallen into pieces. And from that daydream came this project, Holocene, which is a large aquarium sculpture sited in public space. And inside that sculpture, which is transparent, you can view it from 360 degrees, performers carry out a series of everyday behaviors that we gathered through an open call process from folks around the world, such as reading a newspaper or washing the windows or selling persimmons in a market. That one's from South India. Coiling a garden hose, tuning a guitar. And I'm going to show you about 75 seconds of video, just so you can see the daydream in motion for a moment, and sleeping. So we've performed, as I mentioned, we've performed the piece around the world, 8 cities so far. And because, again, it's transparent and reflective, the work's meaning really changes with every location. So here we are in coastal Australia, looking out towards the water, and really the bleaching Great Barrier Reef beyond. Here are the streets of Miami during a downpour, the street flooding around us. Here's Times Square, where our premiere took place on the same day that the current administration announced its withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords. And this is the newspaper that we had laminated on that day and performed with in the Holocene tank. And so the performance actually became a site of contemplation and also a site of protest, as protesters gathered in Times Square on that day. And a couple of years ago, Marta Kern and Shilpi invited me to adapt Holocenes for Science on a Sphere. So myself and a team of collaborators created this resulting film called Holocenes Little Boxes. And I'm going to show you about a minute of it right now.
Lars, we can't hear the audio on the film.
You can't hear the audio like it's soft, or it's just silent?
It's silent.
Interesting. I didn't change anything.
Same for the other one.
You could hear the other ones, or you couldn't?
Not.
Okay, yeah, the audio doesn't really matter in the other ones, but I didn't change anything since our tests, so Let me try something. I'm going to turn off my... Let's...
Nothing yet. Nothing yet. And you're on mute. You're muted.
Is that why? I couldn't tell. I mean, yes, I haven't changed anything since we tested it, so I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to try to sort it right now. But luckily, everybody can find the Holocene little boxes themselves on the SOS app. But the title came from the song, actually made famous by Pete Seeger, Little Boxes, about conformity and closed-mindedness and cookie-cutter homes. But obviously the idea of little boxes for me has really shifted with the pandemic, and our isolation is more pronounced than ever, while conversely the pandemic restates the obvious, which I'm sure we can all agree on, that the world is more than ever one interconnected system. And until we all make decisions with that reality in mind, the choices we make will be insufficient to meet the challenges we face. And I hope and believe that a renewed alliance between artists and scientists, and also understanding each other's kind of plight and the challenges that we face in society to advance our methodologies, practices, beliefs, truths, could be, could lead the way in the future. Thanks. So I think...
Thanks so much for that, Lars. Thanks for that reminder that art and artists have a role of critical thinking and creativity, just as scientists do. So we'll go ahead and move on to a Q&A session. We've had some people type in questions in the chat window, so I'll go ahead and read some of those.
Sure.
So the first question is from Leon Geschwind from Hawaii. What was your approach to convince the Ritzy Hotel management to install the exhibit, and did their perceptions change after the installation?
Well, it wasn't the Ritzy Hotel management that I needed to convince. It was, it was a commission that came from Art Basel, and they had kind of control over the site. But there is something right at odds a bit philosophically about the piece, in the sense that there were people who were on this roof. It was open to the public and free. However, it's a very exclusive location. So the crowds who were accessing it, were from a narrower demographic than Holocenes, which is truly in public space. And people were drinking champagne on the roof deck at sunset, contemplating these little sculptures moving up and down through the water, and having a kind of lovely time. And DJ, there was music. I brought a ensemble from New Orleans to play, called the Treme Brass Band, to play funeral dirges, because I felt like they had experience, from Katrina, but also otherwise, of the kind of trauma and tragedy, of what in a way that like coastal flooding affects people's lives. And so I wanted to bring that texture into the space. However, I don't know that ever really landed or disrupted the community there. And I think that that's part of the piece, is that something about that art audience and that art context is willing to kind of consider some of these issues, but really nothing more than that. It's not really changing behavior, and that's something that I'm struggling with, and something that I know we talked about in making Holocenes Little Boxes, which is ultimately an educational film. It's ultimately about the interconnectedness of the planet, and about decisions that we can make, actions that we can take. Right? What's the call to action? What can I do? And in an art space, I found it really challenging to move from contemplation to action. And so the piece is about that, and actually that the kind of failure, the distance with which the piece can be viewed, that SOS is a statement in real time about that crisis.
Okay. Kind of related to the SOS that you just mentioned, a question from Marissa Jones. Did you have to get permission or notify anyone to post maritime distress signals on the coast?
That's a great question. It came up and we talked to the local Coast Guard and they were like, no, it's fine at Art Basel. Don't worry about it. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. Nobody's going to take it seriously. Because it was, it was on land and it was these bright orange flags. There was something. So the Coast Guard wasn't concerned, so we weren't concerned. And I'm not even sure if it was the Coast Guard or it might have been the fire marshal actually. But one of them said, don't worry about it.
Cool. Let's see, a question from, I'm just seeing an email address, I'm not quite sure, but they say, thanks Lars for perspective. How can we bring STEAM, especially the A, art part in STEAM, to the SOS globe?
I mean, I think bringing, I don't know the extent to which, I think bringing more artists into science, spaces. I think continuing that dialogue, I think there's like ways that our brains work that are very complementary. So I think bringing more artists into those spaces to answer that question on the ground for your specific community for a specific piece is really the answer. Hire local artists. And solve it in small teams. Solve your issue in small teams together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the Nurture Nature Center, they've definitely done a lot of work with artists who live in their region, and I think that's been really effective for teaching people about some of the flooding events that they have in eastern Pennsylvania. So, let's see, Annette, do you consider how to invoke a message of hope or action with these installations?
Yeah, I mean, when people watched Holocene, some people would see cataclysm. Some people would see the beauty of adaptation of the human species. And I remember standing behind a group of, 8 or 9-year-old kids in Miami, and they were having a fight about whether it was about, the piece was about mermaids or dreaming or death. And I said, well, it's about, that's the beauty of art, in my opinion, is that it's open for interpretation. It's a platform for imagination. It provokes conversation. So I'm personally not specifically trying to deliver a message of hope necessarily, but I think I intrinsically and intuitively make work that's about imagination, and imagination by default, not about what could go wrong, but really what we could do better. And how we could imagine a way out of the morass that we're in. That kind of creativity is, I think, what's really necessary. And I think that those skills have really atrophied in this country, and we're seeing the result of it in public discourse. I think the defunding of the arts and people's lack of exposure to the arts, to music education, to dance, that has a lot to do with why I think you see the polarization that you do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Do you have thoughts on how arts can be evaluated by decision makers in government? Most of the things that you've mentioned are qualitative, but the technology of decision makers leans towards quantitative analysis, as it is easier to compare and visualize.
Yeah, I mean, it's like yin and yang, right? It's the other side of the seesaw. So if you really want to live your life based on quantitative analyses, then I don't know, what is the molecular signature of the love that I have for my life? I love the love I have for my wife. I'm not sure. So to be human is to realize that there are things that you can count on your fingers, and then there are things that you can't. Maybe that's not true. Maybe everything is measurable, but I think that's a dangerous simplification of the human experience. And I love science, and I also love the mysteries that it can't. I love science in part because of the mysteries that it can't explain. I love the thing that science. I love the boundaries past which science has not yet pushed, and perhaps probably context of great art, the way that it opens my pores, all of those things open my pores are related and mysterious and inherently qualitative.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we need to do as a society is we need to value the qualitative. We need to stop thinking that we can make decisions only based on something you can put in a spreadsheet or a data visualization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And somewhat related to that, this is kind of a question I thought of. For the last number of years, there's a movement to have science communicators to be a bridge between scientists and the general public. Do you feel that there's a good corollary for that in the art world? Since artists are often trained or they're around people with it, there can be a specific artistic literacy or language that a lot of people are not exposed to. Do you think we need an intermediary, especially for like climate-driven work?
Wow, the thing that's disturbing to me, right, is I think scientists for a bunch of years thought, well, if we get the information out there so that people can understand it and they realize what's happening, then it will move to the top of their priority list and we'll make different decisions, like as voters, as leaders, et cetera. That's not the case. I think people who know what's going on are still not moving it to the top of their priority list, right? It's still not cracking the top 5. So that's a different problem than just raising awareness, which is what I think the challenge was around climate change for its booster rocket phase. I'm not sure what the challenge of the current phase is right now, but it's the same challenge that we have with why do a large percentage of people totally not believe that facts are real?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a generational problem, and I think it goes down to critical thinking. I think it goes back to the defunding of public education, the arts in public education, but also just the quality of public education in general, and the breakdown of critical thinking skills to be able to parse truth from fiction, to be able to have the skills to distrust propaganda or to recognize propaganda as such. And it's such a shame that it's become scientists' job not to just do the work to reflect reality, but now to convince people that reality, which absolutely is based in the real world, is worth attending to and making decisions based on. That's why I was asking that question of scientists. I feel like the scientific perspective has been devalued in a way that had never happened in my lifetime, and is similar to what I feel like artists have experienced for my lifetime. And I just wonder if that was a shock or a wake-up call to people, and what they can, we have this reprieve potentially with a new administration, but I think this problem of the erosion of trust in facts and science and truth is going to be a problem for the scientific community and the artistic community for some time to come.
Let's see. Good. A few more minutes. If you all have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We have one question from Stephen Sapecki. What's your next big project?
My next big project is called Roam. ROAM, and it's a speculative tracing of my family history, the Afghan side of my family. So it's basically an autobiography that stretches from the present 70,000 years into the past. So hopefully I'm working with some genomicists and some paleoanthropologists to create a model of the possible trajectories of the migrations of my family based on my DNA profile. And then to tell that story outdoors in sports stadiums using augmented reality glasses. And the performance space is actually participatory, so that audiences wear these AR glasses and are able to roam. They're actually able to return to the hunter-gatherer state and travel across a football field or a soccer field and have different experiences in that context.
Nice. Let's see. So this question is from Marta Kern For the Holocene projects and locations, have you heard anecdotally about attitude or behavior changes? And if yes, what?
I've heard anecdotal, no patterns. I've overheard and been talked to by audience members, and I've seen things happen. So when we were in Times Square has this particle collider kind of energy. It's like this strange system with people coming up and down avenues and streets and traffic and cops and when we put Holocenes in the middle of it, actually Holocenes moves very, very slowly. And it's very enigmatic, meaning when you first see Holocenes in public space, right, if you're not, and most people don't see it knowing that they're going to see an artwork. Most people come across it incidentally, which was one of the important pieces about devising the work in public space. So they think, like, is that an advertisement? Is that really a person, or is that video? Is it a magician? Like, is it David Blaine? And the longer that they can't figure out what it is or why it's there, their metabolism actually kind of slows, and there becomes a sort of a small microculture that shifts the energy and that starts to of Times Square, that starts to radiate outwards. And so once you get a small group assembled around it, we saw this every time we performed, that group would grow from 500 to 1,500 to 3,500, and every once in a while it would radiate out, and suddenly you'd have 7,000 people looking at this box, and that might only last for 7 seconds. And then suddenly there would be just a shift in the group, and all of these heads would turn, and it would break back down to 1,500 people, and everybody else would be on their way. And how that expansion and contraction, that ebb and flow of attention changed Times Square, I couldn't really say, other than, people talk. I'm the artist, so people say complimentary things, and I talk, and I overhear a lot of things about people's experience of the work and what they think it's about, and that's really the most interesting part of it for me. But other than individual stories and sort of perceiving those patterns in terms of audience behavior, that's all that I personally know.
I love that. I love that reference to actually having the sense of people's metabolism closing or slowing. I remember you mentioning with climate issues, you said something like, we need more of a kinetic shift at a cellular level. And I love that. I think really getting into the body in that way can actually create change over time. Carrie, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, I think we're out of time. So let's thank Lars, Shilpi, and wrap it up. And then I have one announcement before we let people go.
Okay, sounds good. Lars, thank you so much for this presentation. We all really appreciate it. Thanks to the audience for your amazing questions. And as Eric Hackathorn mentioned in the chat, Holocene's Little Boxes is also available on SOS Explorer, which is the mobile app. You can watch it today very easily. Thanks again so much, Lars, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for the work that you're doing. We appreciate it over here. Bye-bye.
Right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. And a couple more people have come back. So my name is Maggie Allen. I work for NOAA's Office of Education. I'll be facilitating today's lightning talk session. We're going to kick off today with our second round of lightning talks. Lightning talks are abbreviated 5-minute presentations that allow efficient introduction of new projects or sharing pertinent new ideas to the whole group. We have split the lightning talks by theme over the 3 days of this workshop. Hopefully a lot of you saw yesterday's four different lightning talks, and today we're exploring a new theme, science, and how different programs have modified their outreach during COVID-19. So we're continuing to build on our education theme we saw yesterday, but today we're really looking at how our community partners are doing outreach and education through their various programs. So there'll be 4 presentations today. I'm going to just read the titles real quick as I switch my slide. And if you are the presenter, it'd be great if you, when I read off your name, you just maybe turn off your webcam and give a quick wave or say hello in the chat so we know you're there, and so you can just say hello. So the first one you'll watch is Kathryn Semmens with Nurture Nature Center presenting on using science on a sphere to connect science and art. Here she is. Then next up, we'll have Emily Yam and Stacy Wong of the Aquarium of the Pacific presenting on adapting aquarium programs for at-home audiences. And then we'll have, hello Emily, see you. And we'll have Joe Witte with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory presenting on TV meteorologists as local climate partners. Do I see Joe Witte here? I just want to make sure. I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see everyone maybe, so just want to make sure Joe Witte's here. Okay, I don't see Joe Witte, so if one of our team wouldn't mind trying to reach out to him, make sure he joins so he can be there to answer the Q&A in about 20 minutes, that'd be great. All right, and then lastly, we'll have Maurice Henderson, also with NASA, presenting on life in the universe. And I see Maurice there. Hi, Maurice. Thanks for joining. All right, so yeah, normally when we're face-to-face, these talks are given in rapid format with the presenter talking through their slides in about 5 minutes. So because we're virtual this year, we were modifying the process. If you were there yesterday, you know how this works, but to help ensure we stay on time and ensure accessibility for everyone, we have asked the Lightning Talk presenters to pre-record their talks. And for the highest quality viewing experience, we will be watching a private link of the Lightning Talks that have been set up on YouTube. And Beth is going to paste the link in a minute where you can watch that. So please watch the 4 presentations that have been clustered into that one 20-minute video. You can open the link that Beth has just placed in the chat and watch them independently. And then in about 20 minutes, we'll come back. We'll open the chat up for some Q&A. So please stay in this Google Meet the whole time and add your comments and questions to the chat as you come up with them as you watch the video. So again, we'll reconvening in this about 20 minutes from now, but please don't leave Google Meet. Just watch them in a separate window. So at about 2:59 p.m., we will start our Q&A with the presenters. So with that, I'm going to just shut my video off and please enjoy the lightning talks.
Hi, my name is Kathryn Semmens, and I'm the Science Director at Nurture Nature Center. We are a small science-based community center located in Easton, Pennsylvania. Today I will be talking to you about using Science on a Sphere to connect science and art. Why science and art? Well, Nurture Nature Center's mission is to build environmental literacy and community resiliency using informal science education, art-centered approaches to learning, and community dialogue. So I work very closely with our art director, Carrie Maxfield, to integrate science and art into our program. One project that we work on together is called Perspectives. We had Perspectives 5th year last year, 2019, where we looked at making a connection from global to local. Perspectives uses the power of art to help promote awareness and understanding of different science issues. And it works to engage artists, scientists, and community members in a collaboration that fosters an exchange of ideas. Specifically, the artist collaboration was with 19 artists. They created works of art that combined their inspiration of Science on a Sphere different data sets. They chose specific data sets to inform their art. They picked from a range of subjects after seeing presentations on a number of different topics, from exoplanets to bird migrations and hurricanes, as well as others. This is one example. Tom Maxfield is an artist and illustrator who is interested in exoplanets. The work you see displayed on the wall at Nurture Nature Center was inspired by many of the different exoplanet datasets available on the sphere. Karen Maurer was inspired by clouds. She wrote a story and a song about clouds and their relationship to dreaming. She used a variety of different datasets related to clouds on the sphere. This is her presenting this during a live performance in 2019. Linda Gaines was interested in Mars and Venus and how these planets were perceived over time, especially as how they were reflected in artwork. So she produced an 8-minute video clip that went through different periods of art and their relationships with Mars and Venus. Don Wilson was really impressed with the plate tectonics dataset available on the sphere and produced this piece of artwork in response. Melissa McClin is a wool felt sculptor. She was inspired by the bird migration dataset to develop some felt sculptures of different birds which hold the flags of all the countries they traverse during their migration. Anne Burke reflected on forests in a poem that talks about not only the deforestation that we've seen over the past several decades, but also her personal connection to several forests in Kentucky. This project had a significant impact on the artist as well as the community members that participated and saw the end exhibit. You can see some testimonials here from some of the participating artists. Karen Maurer felt that the project was a wonderful use of the Science on a Sphere dataset, and it added to her understanding of the information. I also personally worked with several of the artists to enhance their understanding of different science issues. One artist was really impacted by having a better understanding of climate change and what we do and do not know. This was just a quick overview of our Perspectives project that we completed last year. I'm going to end the presentation with a recording of Karen Maurer's Clouds presentation and encourage you all to seek more creative ways to engage your community with the Science on a Sphere. Thank you.
My friend watched as storm clouds raged high above the mesa. Lightning flashed, and even though it was so high above her, she heard the growl of thunder. The cloud opened and rain fell. It disappeared in the searing heat, reabsorbed into the thunderhead. It never reached the ground. It felt as if I could see the grace of God, she told us later, but my despair kept the rain from reaching me. Humans imbue nature with hidden mysteries. Clouds are among the most mysterious natural phenomena. They're very hard to predict because they are at the mercy of wind and thermals, the contour of the land, the waves and the sea.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. Today, Alicia and I are going to give you a quick overview of what we've done with our Science on a Sphere programming since we closed to the public. Come on inside. At the back of the education offices, we have a full service studio, and we use that to create and produce and distribute content to YouTube, Zoom, and other platforms. We have an educator stand in front of a green screen, and we can put video, pictures, images, or even use SOS Explorer and integrate that into programming. I'll have Alicia tell you a little bit about what we've been working on.
Now, as COVID-19 hit, as many institutions know, we've had to pivot and try to serve our audiences a little bit different. Our studio's been running since 2011. We do paid programming for schools, and we have some special programs that we offer. But we decided to pivot and offer a new suite of virtual programs that have streamed through YouTube free for audiences. One of the important tools that we've been using is this one. It is great to be able to integrate, especially with our green screen, all of the data sets that are available on the Explore app. And so I have my iPad here to control it for our classrooms. Using this along with the other media tools has given us a chance to really add some data literacy. It's been able to take subjects and look at them from different scales. It's been able to offer a lot of opportunity for students to make observations, so phenomena-based learning, and really driving some of those opportunities for students to make observations and really lead the discussion. So for example, even just looking at our Earth here, being able to zoom into where we live, starting the discussion, looking at colors, shapes, thinking about meaning of this, and then layering on top of that one of my favorite data sets, which is our sea surface currents and sea surface temperatures. And from here, we've been able to talk about, using our data sets, everything from, of course, currents to how our Earth is unevenly heated, as you can see here from our our wonderful data set. So some of these bigger topics like climate and weather, climate change, but also being able to look at what it's like off of our coast here in California. So for example, having students make observations, think about what they're looking at, come up with an explanation of why these colors are different, and then putting it in context of our local ecosystems. And I was talking about integrating some of those other media pieces. Now, I'm not alone here in the studio. We often have a 3-person team that's helping to run our studio. So we have an educator that I'm playing the role of right now. We also have someone who's behind our kind of controls, and so they will help us put up some of the other media. So today, Stacy is going to help us. So if I'm talking about some of these nice cold water currents and how they impact our local ecosystems, I can have her put up, for example, one of our exhibits here at the aquarium. This is our amber forest that she can put up. So then again, scale is really important here. We're able to look globally at the entire Earth. We're also able to have students make observations and predictions based on what they're seeing, and then look to see in context now how that applies to our local ecosystems. We're still learning lots of ways to integrate this technology piece, but it's been a really wonderful way for us to have these discussions, and we hope to continue to further do this with our audiences.
Using Science on a Sphere Explorer has been really helpful to us because we're able to ask our learners to think critically, to make observations, and to actually make connections about why these data are meaningful to them. The other wonderful thing, of course, is that we can connect all that data to our live animal exhibits. Just because we don't have anybody here doesn't mean we can't help connect them in all those different ways. So in a time when we're socially distant, we can still stay relevant. Hope that everybody's hanging in there, and hope you have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It's hard to tell virtually where you are, but virtually I'm happy to be here. I'm Joe Witte, a former TV weather forecaster and now a climate outreach specialist in Pasadena, California. How many of you saw this report from NOAA Education? The theory of change. Comes down to local, 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 just like real estate. Local knowledge and local trusted relationships can result in action by citizens. So how can we take this beautiful globe that Sandy created and bring it down on occasion to my neighborhood about things I care about? We could get data from the local weather service, but this is complicated, not easy. What if the wheel has already been invented? What if the Rochester SOS fans could see how winters have become warmer over the past 30 years? And compare that to Seattle, or St. Louis, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Augusta. What if, after the busiest hurricane season on record, you could have a video of 30 seconds or 3 minutes about hurricanes? Or what if you could have posted on your website a detailed, in-depth story about the hurricane season? It's all happening at Climate Matters, helping TV weather forecasters report local climate change stories, a partnership with NASA, NOAA, the AMS, George Mason, and also Climate Central. It started in 2010. It's still ongoing thanks to 4 NSF grants. And a lot of the results have been published in peer-reviewed science journals. Climate Central is headed up with 2 program managers, Bernadette and Sean, both former TV broadcasters, now climate experts and climate teachers. Climate Central is nonprofit. It's a communications organization. It creates weekly scientific content and graphics for 240 U.S. cities. And all that information is available in a media library, easily accessible. It's even available in Spanish. There's information on local stream temperatures, poison ivy, allergy season, solar energy. There are winter packages, summer packages, energy packages. The packages are updated on a regular basis. How does Climate Central do it? They focus on the science using data, climate data from NOAA. They localize their stories. They make it simple. They operate it on a news cycle. And they offer it, best of all, free to journalists. 968 TV forecasters are using the information. That's over 900 local TV weather forecasters as potential partners. They are trusted sources of science information, have daily exposure to the audiences, and have good communication skills. And a lot of them are during virtual classrooms. Now is the time. Survey says Americans want more climate coverage. This a result of the 6 Americas Global Warming Study. Many of you are probably familiar with this one. Since 2011, George Mason and Yale have been tracking attitudes and beliefs of Americans in 6 different categories about their beliefs in global warming. And look at where we are now. 54% of Americans are alarmed or concerned about global warming. Now is the time you could put Climate Central in your communications package and complete the theory of change. Here's a pet project of mine. I think there's a great storytelling opportunity about El Niño's teleconnections. How does the atmosphere know what the ocean is doing on the other side of the world? And I'm looking for partners. If you're interested, there's my phone number and there's my email. I hope to hear from you. And thank you.
For over 30 years now, the Hubble Space Telescope has brought us new views of the universe.
Hubble sees evidence of hundreds of billions of galaxies, and we know these galaxies are home to tens and hundreds of billions of stars like our sun.
We have concluded that planets are forming around most of these stars. They are called exoplanets. Many of the exoplanets are hot gas giants like Neptune or Jupiter.
But some are in the habitable zone around their star, where water can exist in liquid form. Hubble has detected water vapor in the atmosphere of some of these exoplanets, along with critical organic molecules that are essential to life as we know it. Our telescopes measure the color of the light passing through the exoplanets' atmospheres.
We are using great observatories to taste the chemistry of these atmospheres at great distances across the universe.
And we are probing and touching the oldest objects in our solar system. Our OSIRIS-REx spacecraft will bring soil samples back to us in 2023 so that we can better understand what building blocks for life have existed across our solar system for billions of years.
We know our sister Venus has become an extremely hot, hellish place, but it hasn't always been that way. Long ago, it probably had a lot of water, like Earth. Our Da Vinci spacecraft seeks to probe the atmosphere to unlock many secrets about its past and how the breakdown of its carbon cycle has left a high level of carbon dioxide in its atmosphere.
Every 2 years, we send probes to gain better insight into the watery past of Mars. With each new probe, we learn more about water worlds in or near the habitable zone of their stars. We see the effects of large bodies of water on this currently dry and dusty world.
We know that the abundance of water on Earth makes life possible almost everywhere, from the deepest vents of our oceans to the birds above the highest mountain peaks. Our blue marble is proof positive that life can exist orbiting an ordinary middle-aged star nestled in the calm band of stars in one of the billions of beautiful spiral galaxies.
Our world has enjoyed almost 1 billion years of tranquility to nudge our processes to be in almost perfect harmony to support the abundant life forms found here.
I imagine an advanced alien civilization observing from afar must wonder in amazement about the abrupt and hazardous changes that are underway in our world.
What is driving the rapid rise in carbon dioxide in our atmosphere after thousands of years of stability?
They must see the impact of this as our little blue marble warms to uncomfortable levels for many of its species.
They might be asking, are we witnessing the beginnings of what happened to their sister planet Venus, which became unbelievably hot?
What they don't know is that one species will determine the next chapter for our little blue marble. What will it be?
Great. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and thank you again to the Lightning Talk for your pre-recorded presentations. So continue to put some Q&A, some questions in the chat, please, and we will get to them. We have about 15 minutes, so we have plenty of time. So I'm going to start with a question for Kate. It's from Nicholas Van Acker. He said, I'd love to hear more about how this project came to fruition. How did the artists choose their data sets? What role did your institution have in the artworks created? And how did you interpret those artworks to the public?
Yeah, great questions. So the Perspectives project has been one that we've been doing for several years now, and we get funding from the Pennsylvania Local Council on the Arts to support that. In the past, we have just talked with the artists about things that they're interested in with our local environment and tried to pair them with scientists to do interviews or help them do research to inform their pieces. But I really wanted to incorporate the science on a sphere. So I gave a general presentation to all the artists on the sphere, covering a range of different data sets that I thought would be relevant. So everything from bird migrations to plate tectonics to climate change and more. And then we invited them to think more about the topics. And then they would have one-on-one sessions with me or our outreach educator, Jeff Mucklin, to discuss more about the data set, learn more about the data set itself and the topic in general. And honestly, the artists would just be so interested in the topic that they would go out and do their own research. So it was really easy for us to help guide them and provide resources. And I think at first I was worried that it was going to be, a big teaching effort on our part, but it was more of a connector and facilitator role, and helping them sort of guide them to understand the topic better. And then in terms of the work itself, we didn't have too much input. We would see drafts and maybe help them like correct if they misunderstood a data set or something, but their pieces are really their own. And then this was pre-COVID that we had an exhibition, and we had a number of artists who did either poetry or songs or stories related to the data sets. And so we had a special evening that showed those, but then we also had the more physical exhibits were shown in our gallery spaces. And we asked each artist to write up a short blurb explaining the piece, so how they interpreted it, and that would be displayed on the wall. We did continue it this year, and we were focusing on migration and hibernation. So I showed them a sphere show that we developed related to those topics and the data sets that relate to that on the sphere. And then we've had a few artists who have been able to participate. A number of them had to drop out for reasons related to the pandemic, but we are hoping to have a virtual tour of that sometime early next year.
Thank you, Katie. All right, next we have a question for Joe Witte from Alex Levine. So Alex asked, he said, learning how to effectively communicate climate change to broad and sometimes disbelieving audiences is a critical part of SOS outreach. So actually, I guess this is for Joe first, but anyone can feel free to jump in and also answer this question. Because he asked, does Joe Witte or anyone else have any good resources for SOS facilitator professional development in this area?
Oh, yes, there are all sorts of great sources out there. And the Noki folks are really especially good. The Boston Science Museum. There are numerous sites. This has been under study for about a decade, and I can easily pass some of those sites on to everybody. And so I will do that later on. And I'm sure there are lots of others who can add more website spots with lots of good information.
Does anyone else from the lightning talks want to add to that? Some resources to help disbelieving audiences?
So we're going to hold today.
I was just going to say, oh, go ahead, Joe.
Go. Oh, I was just going to say Skeptical Science is a great website too.
So we actually, here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, participated in a grant-funded program where we took Noki-based materials and developed it with with data visualization. So that was called Visualizing Change. That was many years ago, and I can either send out the website. It's just vizchange.org, sorry. And we worked on that with many others, including Annette. And so we have all that online, and it's all available. So check that out.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. There's a lot of great resources in the chat right now, and Noki has been mentioned a few times. Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, free online course as well. So yeah, lots of great resources as well in the SOS catalog. So I have a couple questions for Emily. Annette Brickley asked, are the classrooms you're interacting with also using SOS Explorer, or just all viewing what you project?
So initially, they just view what we project. Some of the times we've used the SOS Explorer, it's been in partnership with the Los Angeles Unified School District. We are, through a partnership, serving a couple thousand, so not all of them, but a couple thousand students through LAUSD programming. We did a climate change section with them, and we use the SOS Explorer for that. So when we have the kind of contact with classrooms, we do provide SOS Explorer as a resource, and whether or not the teacher decides to use that sort of on the teachers. We haven't actually gotten any survey data that, we don't actually know if they're using it yet, but I think we can find that out. So that's certainly a resource. We always try to keep it both self-contained, but with additional things for pre and post. And it's sort of up to the teachers about how much they want to adopt. And but that model has worked well for us. They do use other resources. We know they use our webcams. They know they're looking at our exhibits and stuff like that.
Thanks, Emily. And one more question for you is, how did you show the SOS Explore image on the wall?
So that's a great question. So we actually use, we have an integrated green screen studio. Here at the aquarium, we actually have 3 green screen studio spaces. One is dedicated to my department. So it's an actual room, and it was built for that. So it's like soundproofed and stuff like that. But basically what we do is we have a software that integrates the green screen with the educator standing in front of it. And then we can put any number of visuals behind them just digitally. So the one key thing, of course, is like doing the weather, right? So the educator just has to be able to see what they're pointing at, which is, I think, the hardest part. But so we're lucky we have that infrastructure built in for our technology. But what we do is, even outside of that, we have QuickTime that integrates the iPad into the, like, just as a channel, basically. And so we switch the channel to that computer, and it's already running on there. So there's a couple of different technologies you can use. I even actually thought about it. I think you can even do stuff like that on TikTok and like other platforms, where, because green screen technology is sort of in a lot of different places. So as long as you can integrate that media into anything that's compatible with that, it should work. Not that I've tried it on TikTok. I'm not like about to venture into that territory, but just throwing it out there.
Thanks, Emily. I have a hashtag from Eric saying I'm too old for this.
I know, me too. Our social media manager was like, "Oh, I can show you all the ways," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I want to take you up on that, but I don't know. I don't even have that app on my phone." So, and I see that Sandy had a question about the software that we use. We just have a Mac that's attached, and that uses QuickTime. And then we've used a couple of different like production softwares. And right now, the one we use is called, the name is slipping my mind right now, Wirecast. I have someone in the office like yelling Wirecast in the background. So it's a simple production software.
Thanks, Emily. All right, so Maurice, we have a couple questions for you. Someone from our team asked who was the primary target audience for your film, and what inspired the development of the film.
I've been working with Kate for a couple of years now, and we submitted a proposal 6 months ago for an exoplanet project built on Hubble science. This is the 30th anniversary of Hubble, and so we've been thinking a lot about that. And so this story was one that I was hoping to use in our project. Basically, we're an exoplanet to those aliens. And we had a lot of views of our solar system from alien perspectives, and so we stitched a little storyline to tell that story, that this little blue marble's getting warm.
Thanks, Maurice. And Gabrielle has a curious question. What is the average rate of planet discovery?
It's escalating. Kepler was, I think, about 4,000 exoplanet verifications and tests, has created a much larger data set. So I don't have a number beyond the 4,000 plus, but I suspect that we are rapidly confirming the presence of exoplanets around almost every star in the Milky Way galaxy. There are obviously some places like these very tight clusters of stars that steal matter from each other that probably won't have planets able to form around them. But the vast, vast majority of the 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy will have planets. And almost all of the middle-aged stars like our sun have multiple planets and probably multiple rocky planets in the habitable zone.
Thanks, Maurice. That's super fascinating. And we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So if anyone has some more questions, please put them in the chat. But I'll just read some questions we have from our own team while we have 2 minutes left. So I'll go back to Kate. Carrie wanted to know what science resources you provided to the artists to help them stay accurate with the science.
Yeah, it really depended on the topic. So with the data sets themselves, I kind of directed them to the source and kind of went from there. Always with climate change, I direct them to climate.gov or the NOAA's climate resources and NASA's climate resources. So really just trying to get them to look out and see what data is there already. Trying to think of some of the other ones. With the exoplanets, I gave them a lot of information from NASA's materials. And with the cloud, we have some connections with the local National Weather Service, so we actually were able to connect them to some of those folks to answer some of their questions.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I got a good resource from Andy Collins about another great program, Integrating Science and Art, and I think that ties in well with the keynote we just all listened to. But unfortunately, we are at time. I know our team has a bunch of other questions, and I'm sure all you also have questions, but you have everyone's email, hopefully, from that YouTube link. So please feel free to reach out to the presenters for more questions and to follow up. But I want to make sure that we have some time for a break and a transition. I don't know if Carrie, if you wanted to jump in and say anything as we wrap up.
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, we'll have a 5-minute break as you all find your way to the breakout session of your choice. Again, it is in that workshop program with the unique Google Meet links. Oh, and I have a normal government webcam. I have blurred my background though, which is why it maybe looks interesting, which you all can do as well in changing your virtual background. Nothing too special. So yeah, so please find your way to the breakout session of your choice and let us know in the chat if you have any problems finding that in the program. So I'll stay on for a couple more minutes, make sure people have a chance to find their way. Thank you. And thank you all again to the lightning talk presenters. It was excellent.